Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going beyond basic film criticism to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Adam.
And what are we overanalyzing this week?
Civil War.
So, directed and written by Alex Garland, starring Kirsten Dunst, it features a journey across a dystopian future America, following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. So, you know that I know that you know what I'm going to say about this movie.
So I actually am not sure.
Well, there's one salient fact that we should just get out of the way about the young woman.
What about her?
She was too dumb to live.
Oh, yeah?
She was too dumb to live. And then, spoiler, that means that she did live, and that was very annoying.
I wondered how Too Dumb to Live was going to factor into this movie, because it's like such an ostensibly dangerous job that they're doing that I definitely am not going to say is dumb.
She makes a lot of dumb
If you get killed during it, it's like not a surprise.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like, oh, well, you know, that's sad and all, but so I think it's funny. Yeah, she definitely is green in that movie, and I don't think was, obviously not prepared for what they were doing.
Yeah.
More importantly, what did you think of the movie?
I really liked it.
Oh, me, I'm so glad. I was worried you were going to hate it.
No, I mean, pleasantly surprised. It wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be, which I think really bad marketing on this movie.
Yeah, well, they want that money for, like, to make it like a hot button political movie that it just so isn't.
I know.
Which is great.
I guess I feel like people are staying away because people don't want to watch a movie about this because we're living through it. I don't know. I think, personally, I think it was a mistake, but obviously I have no evidence.
Well, they made money. Like, it had the highest grossing A24 opening.
Okay.
Like, ever. But not like, crazy numbers. But I feel like a lot of people, like, went to see it. I want to go on record just because this is sort of like a public-ish forum. I was clowning on this movie a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to own that, because it was not at all what I thought it would be. And that's what you get for judging a trailer, or even just kind of like a concept even before I saw the trailer. I was just kind of like, the whole time, edge of my seat during this movie.
Agreed. And to be fair, though, like, he was coming off of Men.
Oh, yeah. Which did not help at all. Bottom 5 movie easily for me.
Yeah.
Like, maybe 10. I'll be a little generous. Because there were, like, cool things that were in that movie that were deployed much better in this movie. Like, really great soundtrack work. Odd slow-mo at times that was in Men was just like, you're just making this movie feel like it's forever. Really cool in this movie. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Yeah,
so, I mean, there's so much to talk about. So I will start with, you brought up the soundtrack. Really interesting soundtrack.
Yeah.
And every, like, major music piece, like, song selection was a completely, like, different genre.
Yeah.
And I wish, like, that we could see it multiple times and I had more time to think about, like, what that selection really meant.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was kind of like, so much of the movie seemed really designed to, like, throw you off. Mm-hmm. I would say, like, the music, just the pacing of the action, and then, like you said, there's, like, you kind of almost get, like, a good sort of whiplash from the music. It's not letting you settle down. It's not letting you really get, like, a handle on the movie. Right. In a cool way, not in a frustrating way.
No, totally. Like, it is jarring every time. So the radical switch in genres is jarring, because I can't think of another movie that's done that. But also, like, first couple opening songs were, like, just a jarring piece of music, right? Like, very kind of atonal, electronic, loud, like meant to be jarring.
Yeah, like bombard the senses kind of right off the bat.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
And that was like, there's such a fine line, because there's so many movies maybe Men being one of them, where they try to like sort of like throw you off, and it's like, I see what you're doing, like this is just annoying, but this is a case of it really like working, and that feeling being like, I don't know how like good it feels, but it's very like an interesting sort of immersive way to put you in the movie, like from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think like there's an element, so we'll get into this later, but like the movie is decidedly apolitical. Like it's trying actually very hard not to be political, which I thought was a good choice. But I think too, like it's trying to show you all the different sort of pieces of America and some subcultures. So I also thought like the diversity of the soundtrack worked to kind of walk you through some subgenres in American culture,
like
right?
Different communities they find themselves in,
right,
on their trip,
right. And then the music is just, again, I can't say that was matched to the communities. I don't think it lines up quite that pat, but it definitely gave you a sense of like a whole musical landscape, which the movie was trying to give you a American landscape kind of story.
I think the most political part of the movie is the scene where they have the run into the sniper in the McMansion, and the guy's just like, he is trying to kill us. We are trying to kill him. That boils down everything in the movie. Yeah. So well.
Yeah. I want to circle back to that, but I want to keep moving through because there's a lot of technical elements in this film. There's even more elements to this. Like, I think the thing about this movie was the cinematography was beautiful. Yeah. Like, it was just a beautifully shot.
Yeah, like, there's that one moment, I forget where they were, but she's, like, Kirsten Dunst's character is just waking up and looking at flowers next to her, like, in the green grass. It's like some little bluebell type flowers. And you think, like, oh, something might happen. But no, it's, just starting the day. Yeah. Looked at a flower. Yeah. Moved my head, groaned, got up. Yeah. Went about my day. And these like little, like even, I guess the scene where they stop and she kind of gives the younger photographer like the lesson on shooting the helicopter. It's all just like, that was a good moment to really kind of like, obviously the horrors of the stuff they photograph is the main point of what they're doing, but there's like art in it as well, which is like a kind of disturbing thing to think about, that the movie, I don't really think how much it went into that aspect of it, but like that was a really nice looking sequence too. It's so beautiful.
Right, and it was very meta, right? Like there was, the movie itself was beautifully made, and part of the beauty is the tragedy, right? Like the gunfire, and then towards the end, sky. Yeah, where it's like raining fire. Yeah. And it's just like this incredibly beautiful moment of horror, right? Yeah. So I think that, there was a bit of direct commentary in the movie about it, and then the movie itself. It's just so nice to see a movie that takes sort of risks in that way, like was willing to be gimmicky. There was a lot, all the people shots were like wide aperture, right? Like you could never see a background when you're focused on a person in the movie. And that's pretty consistent throughout, which I thought was, again, there are times like, I know there are people who pillory like 1917 for being gimmicky, and I was like, it was cool, and they tried something and it totally worked. And like, you can't be afraid. I feel like people are trying to play it safe a lot these days, and it was really nice to see a director want to work with the form. Yeah.
And the thing is, that I think instinct to kind of make fun of this stuff is, what is that reflective of, is maybe a fear to try these things in the first place. Maybe they won't work. Right. But I feel like when you're making something like this, maybe you should be satisfied with the risk at all, even if the result doesn't work. Right. Or, I don't know.
Had a very film-like quality, despite the fact that it was obviously digitally.
Yeah. It looked like, when movies can look really good like that, I think Michael Mann movies do a really good job with that. It's possible to make it look good. I think that this was an example of that for sure.
Yeah. So I just, I agree with you. The editing was great. Like, nothing lasted too long. Like, they let you, like, rest in the beautiful shots, but the pacing was good. It
was ferocious.
Shocked when the Alamo waitress laid down my check, although it was a bit on the early side. I was like, which was good. Like, they kind of planned when to do it.
Those last, like, 25 minutes or whatever.
It would have been horrible.
Like, it was very short. I thought it was, like, definitely runtime under an hour 40 before credits.
Yeah, it was like an hour 49.
Yeah.
But it didn't, it went by really fast.
Yeah. But it didn't feel, like, too short. There wasn't, like, I didn't want more of anything.
Right, it wasn't unresolved. I
sit in the theater and watch the movie again.
Yeah, me too.
To be honest with you.
Same. I had that same Zero Dark 30 moment where I was like, that was so intense, and I could just sit here and relive the whole thing. It was
so intense. And the way they kind of, like, I mean, I feel, looking back on it, it did two things almost at the same time, which was never take its foot off the gas at all, but there are oddly humorous moments in it. These are people that are doing what they love, and whether they want to admit it or not, having fun at the same time. And then there are these, just like you said, the gunfire and the night sky. I think the cut, when they look at it one last time, is immediately to the daytime and the firefight they're following. And it's so jarring and so crazy that those two elements work so well together. It's insane intensity, and it's not, like, stressful to watch. You know, it's not like, it's like it's like kind of like, I hate to use the term, it's like a ride, but I felt like the movie did a lot of things to make you feel like you were there.
I agree. I thought, again, just keeping the focus when it was on the people made it feel more intimate and more personal when everybody was talking. It wasn't a story that relied a lot on characterization. Yeah. But that was okay. Like, I'm all right with that.
Well, you got the actors, I think, were doing a lot of heavy lifting for that and not doing... I feel like they all thought, obviously, about who the people that were playing were, but it didn't come off like that either. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It felt very lived in. Like, you didn't need a lot of information about these people to see them as people in this movie.
Right, and you didn't, you kind of, they gave you enough clues as to who everybody was through the dialogue. And yes, the actors, I think, brought a lot of that with them. The cast was great. Oh. Kudos to Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, yeah. All-time Hall of Famer for her, and a career of them, just want to say. I really like her. I don't know where you stand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, from Interview with the Vampire, like, she has kind of, she's just really navigated a career full of kind of great, memorable performances and really stayed out of a lot of pitfalls that, like, people fall into them, and I'm not going to blame other actors for getting typecast or for whatever, but, like, I mean, she's just had such an incredible career, and in such an incredible career, this was such a different role for her.
Yeah, and she carried the movie. Like, I liked the support. All the other actors were great, too. But, I mean, it was her show for sure, and in a very kind of, like, generous way, right? It didn't feel like the movie was taking pains to make that the case. It just kind of happened very organically, I think, rather than shortchanging the other characters or other aspects of the movie.
Agreed. Oh man, I wouldn't have believed that Kirsten Dunst could look so, like, world weary and haggard, and she just really embodied that character. Yeah. Literally embodied, like, everything about the way she walked, the way she moved, the way she picked up her camera, like, just perfect.
Yeah, it was really great.
I liked the rest of the cast. I will say I got a little bit kind of annoyed, frustrated. I don't know, when Jesse Plemons was doing his whole thing and, like, being like, "Where are you from?" And the guy who has a very obvious accent was like, "Florida." I was like, okay, who's gonna believe that you're from Florida? Yeah. Like, he's like, "We're all Americans." I was like, "You are clearly not American, my dude."
I actually saw that was another part from the trailer that I thought was gonna be annoying, and it was pretty scary, I thought. but he's someone who I always have to remember that he's played psychos before, because I think he kind of can do bumbling really well too.
I don't know that I've seen him in
Fargo season 2.
No,
he's like a dummy.
Okay.
And that, and then Breaking Bad, I think, was his first like big role. He was in the last 2 seasons of that. Yeah. And he was
apparently he's very famous in Brazil already.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking about Jesse Plemons. Not
Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, he's that guy.
I mean, Victorious. Like, that's all I know from Jesse
I had
Plemons.
never seen that guy before either.
Yeah, he's apparently like a pretty big star in Brazil.
He has like a franchise there. A lead squad that's apparently like...
No, I know Jesse Plemons from Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, good. That confused me. You're like...
Yeah. No, that and like most recently, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah. I want to get it on. You can edit this out, but that movie is terrible. Mm-hmm. And I think it deserves to be said. Really, anytime. Yeah. I think there's no conversation that's not appropriate to work that into. So
Wagner Moura, he was really good.
Yeah. He also, like, they didn't do him any favors in the trailer because I think that I just want to tar this trailer a little bit because it's so annoying. He has the first line in it where they're in like the dress shop. And he had, there's a pretty bad civil war going out there. I'm like, great, this is going to be this movie. And then the context of the movie, that makes sense, like why he says that like that. Because they're in this weird town where they're acting like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
I thought, his character, very nuanced. Like, I love that you have this part where he, is comforting the younger photographer and like, he's like a pretty cool guy. And then they run into the other crew. He's like, he was all like wasted, hidden on her. And it's like, who's to say, right? I don't think that it's like very lifelike. It's not like there's like, oh, we thought it was this and then it's that. Like, no, it's like real people like acting like they do.
Actually, I thought like in direct contrast to Men. So their scene together where he's like comforting her after having gone through the firefight and he's like, you may not sleep if you want me to stay up and keep you company. And she's just kind of like, I don't know what this is. Yeah. Like, and like, I felt it so hard. You're like, there's just like that fine line between like being caring and like hitting on you. And I'm like, and they play that line where you're like, she obviously can't tell if his intentions are good or not. So she's sort of like, nah, that's all right. Like, and I thought like, again, what he completely misunderstood about Men in that movie, I was like, in this movie, I was like, no, that was pitch perfect. Yeah. Because, there's plausible deniability, but I honestly couldn't tell you either way.
Yeah, and it's like, who's to say what would have happened if, sure.
Yeah, and he could have been a perfect gentleman. Like, the entire scene before that was like him holding onto her Kevlar vest. Yeah. The whole ride through the building, right? Like, you just see him repeatedly, like, yanking her back. Yanking her back.
The way the journalists are handled in this movie, I think, goes such a long way to making you feel like you're there. Because it's like, that could be us, It's like a civilian taking pictures while there's a firefight. And I think those sequences, particularly at the end, were all so well done. And it made me feel like I was right there.
Yeah. And I just I liked that. I liked then that is kind of mirrored at the end where he's holding onto Lee's Kevlar vest. Yeah. In that sort of same protective fashion. And you get that he's like a cowboy. He's in it for the adrenaline high. But you also get that he does believe in what he's doing. Oh, yeah, and he cares about the people around him.
That could have been like a way overboard, like macho kind of character too, and I think that it was it was just so well done.
Agreed.
They had so many types, like the old guy. I forget that guy's name.
He's such a that guy.
But he was in Beau is Afraid, another really great. Yeah, he's all over the place.
Meh.
Steven Henderson, I think is his name, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of those people, I know him when I see him, couldn't tell you what his name is. He's sort of the quintessential that guy.
But, that could have been the old pro looking on, it was just no, there's so much, without getting really any information, there's so much to these people. And like that's the success of the movie as a whole. Like there's no information really about this war at all. There's no information about the president. There's really not a lot of sort of like hard facts, and it's so crazy that you can, instead of getting like confused or like angry at that, I feel like you kind of like shade it in yourself. It allows for like a lot of like, well, here's what I think from this, that there's really not evidence for in the movie. It just feels like this is what's happening.
Right, like it lacks exposition, which is nice. Like you're not getting a lot of boring monologues about like what's going on. And I remember like, so, you know, they're doing their drive, they go through an underpass and it just says go Steelers. And I'm like, okay, so now we're getting into Pittsburgh. Yeah. You know, like, and I was like, good job you for like just being like, here's a hint as to where we are. And we don't have to have a whole discussion about it. So much of that drive reminded me of, he didn't direct this movie, but he wrote it with 28 Days Later. Yeah, and it just, it like, there's one cliche moment. I've never stuck my hand out of a car window and waved it around. Yeah. Like, that is very annoying. That needs to never appear in a movie again. Like that. Remember when there was this like wheat everywhere and people were just like, I'm brushing my wheat and like the sunlight's shining through my hand. I was just like, that is such a like movie shot cliche. But other than that, I would say like, again, nuance. Like the scenes of destruction were not so heavy-handed, which I appreciate. No, and it is quite disturbing. Yeah. And violent. But it is not, like, gratuitous feeling or, like going for, like, cheap shock value. It was not, like, you know what, I all my friends that wanted to see this, too, also were doing a lot of hating, and the way I pitched it was, like, the whole movie is, like, the last act of Children of Men. Mm. Which is, like, another really great sort of movie like this, right? It has like, if it has aged not as well, maybe there's like some more expository moments in it that are kind of annoying, but that was like the closest comparison after seeing it in like a good way, because I think that movie's really good. Yeah, no, I think for me, so I actually was just talking about the like, you know, like destroyed buildings, cars left abandoned on the side of the road. Like, again, it's hard to make some of that stuff new, and it felt disturbing and it didn't feel too heavy-handed. But I agree with you, like, on the violence front, every single death felt impactful. Yeah, it's very in your face. Like, it doesn't shy away from that at all. Like, there's not, like, what I like to term, like, arty deaths, where it's, like, you're trying to make it, like, artistic, adding some lame stuff to it. It was very sort of, like, blunt and, like you said, impactful and real. Right. Whenever anyone died, even the, you know, like the big climactic battle scene, like you feel every death in that. Like, right. It's like you almost like, and another thing, like, I mean, I don't want to like wander too off the point, but I think a real success of making this movie sort of more apolitical is like at times you're like not really, do you ever know who you're like rooting for in these battles? No, right? Yeah. Like, I'm rooting for the city of DC. I gotta say, like, another thing that I will praise in terms of, like, hasn't been done before, like, we've seen the White House get blown up a million times, like, famously Independence Day, but, like, yeah. I was like, oh no, they took it up this felt, like, very, very real. Yeah. It was like my heart hurt. I was like, oh no, not the Lincoln. Like, I was like, you gotta leave something behind. Stupid war somewhere else. Like, yeah, like, the Taliban blowing up those Buddhas, or like all the like national treasures around the world, or even international treasures. Yeah. It frankly, felt like that. Like, you know, getting as casualty of war, I thought. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, the violence was, I mean, again, you're right, because we're not rooting for sides, so it's like every moment of someone getting executed, of which there were several, like, you feel it every time. And then her landing in that pit of bodies could have been really stupid, and I was just like, oh no! Yeah, that was like an action movie moment that really worked, where I'm like so much about that sequence could have been like, all right, this is a stretch. And I'm like, no, I believe that guy was like, you know, screw this. I'm contributing, like, otherwise, like, you know, they all get killed. I'm out here by myself anyway. Like, that's a wrap as it is. It just seemed very, like, calculating and honestly, like,
pretty awesome of a move.
Yeah, no, it was super disturbing and very affecting, and I was like, it didn't feel cliched or rote at all when it happened.
Yeah. I love their car, the excursion that they have. I was so, like, that was a great almost character, the vehicle in the movie. Like, any good road movie should have the thing you're traveling in should be a character. Like Mad Max, how into those you are. Like, his cars in those movies are always a real big part of the plot. You know, it's just like...
Yeah,
I love a good film car. Or like TV show car. That just like,
yeah.
It's Old Faithful.
Yeah, no, so I really do, I agree. I like the car. I think, you know me, I'm not a big car chase person, and it was light on that, so that was good. I also noticed they did an interesting thing with costume design, of which there were almost no costumes in this movie because everyone was just wearing the same clothes. But you see Jessie, the young woman, is wearing like white t-shirts throughout the whole beginning of the movie, and Lee is wearing these like brown drab clothes. And in the final scene, Lee's wearing the white collared shirt. Yeah, and Jessie's wearing this like, it looks black at first, but it's like a blue or like gray drab t-shirt, kind of signaling that they've switched places, and also that Lee is kind of mirroring blanking on the character's name, the older gentleman, Sammy, who is wearing like what, you know, like the almost like a full suit.
Like he looked like kind of like an office worker,
right?
He had
he's
like the striped collared shirt. High, I loved his high-waisted old man pants.
I know, and suspenders.
Like that, what a champ.
So I always like those sort of little visual elements to kind of let you know. And it wasn't like heavy-handed. No.
It's not like, see what we're doing here?
Like, I mean, hopefully we're the only ones who noticed it because we were watching it to pay attention to those kind of details. But so, okay. Anything else, like, sort of on the technical front? Good use of sound design overall. Justin and I talked about that. Good use of silent, or, like, soundtrack over dialogue when it was necessary.
I did really enjoy the fact that they were, like, going from New York to D.C.
Yeah. By route of Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And they explain that, and it's like, it makes sense, like, when you
because they're like 800 miles or like 500 miles to DC, and you're like, okay, it's actually not that long.
Yeah. It's like, well, when you're going that way.
So I had a lot of thoughts about, like, sort of what this movie was trying to say or do, and you kind of touched on a few of them already. So it's from the perspective of, right, war journalists, like
witnesses.
Witness.
Like the official ones. Yeah. Right? These, like she said, I think the mission statement right off the bat in another great moment where she's like, I feel like I took all these other pictures as a message home. Don't do this.
Right. Right. And I think for me, you look at Lee's story, and that's like such the pivotal line that explains so much of what her journey is. But I also thought, for me, the like lens bad pun not intended, I saw this through was thinking about, like, if you're a war correspondent, right? You spent your entire career going overseas. Yeah. And this is the time, first time ever, which you probably thought would never happen, where you were a war correspondent in your own country, right? Like, if you were American, which Lee is American, she's from Colorado, I used to think about, like, now she has to film this and not as a foreigner, right? Yeah.
Like the old Civil War.
Right. Whereas, like, even with, like, okay, let's say she shot the Iraq War or whatever. Yeah. Like, where American troops were there, but it wasn't in America.
There's no, like, no one's invading here or anything. Like, that's...
So I thought, like, you know, you have her journey kind of back to innocence, right?
Yeah. That's why it made sense at the end, is when she's kind of, like, losing it. It's like, this is, like... he gets it together, but it's like when it kind of all hits home, it's such like a that's another thing I feel like should have felt on the nose. It's like, oh, the end of it's like a battle at the Capitol, right? Okay.
The White House, yeah.
Yeah. And it just really, I think that was the moment where it stopped being like something that maybe she could look at like it wasn't here, right? Like that was the moment it all kind of like sunk in that this was it. That's on your home turf, basically, right? And so that made sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I liked that, you had Lee and Jesse. I like that it was two women, because the older man mentor younger man has been done a million times. I was like, it was nice to see them do that with women, and it was really important to me, because when you see Lee fall apart, it's hard and you understand it, but you're like, come on, Lee, like, get it together.
Yeah, this is kind of like the show, right? Yeah. This is like the big moment,
and she totally does, right?
Yeah.
Like, she pulls it back. Of course, when the cars drove off, was like, those are dummy cars.
Oh, yeah.
Like, whatever. That was no big reveal on Lee's part. But I was really, really, really happy that she regrouped and came back to being the professional that she was and had been for so many years. Like, I would have been so disappointed in the movie if she just, like, falls apart.
Yeah. Well, because it makes you think, like, maybe that has happened to her before, right? Like she says, 1 shot out of 30 is what you keep. Maybe 70% of the time you're... I'm in this, I'm stoic, I'm on, and sometimes you fall apart.
Oh, I didn't take it that way. Like, as someone who takes pictures, like, 1 out of 30 is, like, a good rate. But, yeah, I mean, I think you just see her, though, as, like, so flinty, like, so steely-eyed in the face of everything that gets thrown at her.
This is kind of a humanizing moment, right?
Right.
Like, she's not, like, a machine.
Right. She's not a machine, but she is a professional.
Yeah.
And it's like, you needed to see that. Like, you needed to see her regroup. Yeah. But I do think that's sort of the central question of the movie is, like, what is this for, right?
Yeah. That war correspondence in general.
Yeah, I mean, like, so there's...
What's the point of it? Like, bearing witness, you know, for sure.
But, like, and, like, the bearing witness thing, that has been debated is, like, should you interfere, right? Like, that question's been debated a million times. But I think this was, to me, a newer, more interesting one, which is hers, like, what did I do all this for? Like, the point was to tell you, like, don't do war.
Yeah. And you did it anyway. And maybe, I mean, I kind of, like, came away with the sort of, like, what's a constant, right, for human beings? It's, like, kind of doing that. You know, and maybe these people are idealistic enough where they can think, we show you enough bad stuff, we document it enough, maybe someday someone else will just do something different. And does that work? Probably not. Seems like the movie's answer, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I felt like, again, what the movie does so effectively by being so beautifully shot is, like, it shows you how it backfires.
Yeah.
Right? How taking an incredible shot of a horrific moment can glorify or make it more appealing and not... Like,
it's
some
not like
people
such a foreign idea, right? Like, it's like it brings it to reality, right?
Right, so, like, there's so much about the sort of more overt, right? So there's so much debate about movies and, like, whatever TV shows and, like, overt glorification of violence, right? Where it is fictionalized and, like, you know how I feel about Martin Scorsese, right? Like, it is made to look cool and good. Yeah. But she's kind of saying, like, I did this not, like, I felt like what I took away from the movie is they're arguing, like, you weren't trying to make it cool and good.
Yeah, you were trying to prevent it from happening.
But by taking a really good shot, that was somewhat unavoidable.
Yeah, it's kind of created your own job, basically, right? Like, by doing that. Like, if it's like a crummy photograph, then no one looks at it and it doesn't matter and you don't do it anymore. So to be really good, you kind of like it's like sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And I think another really interesting thing the movie does is it doesn't really answer that question, right? It's like the fact that we're sitting here talking about it is what it set out to achieve that goal.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed. It doesn't answer. I mean, it doesn't answer the question, like, whether it's all worthwhile, right? Which is fine and for us to discuss. But I think it does sort of pick a side in terms of, like, if you make art, people are going to respond to art.
Yeah.
And there's kind of, that's a bit unavoidable.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So kind of like human nature is, like, both predictable and unpredictable, right? You can't just, throw something out there like that and like the response you get isn't necessarily going to be what you want or your goal, right?
Right.
To, like, keep this from happening. It's very unpredictable.
Right. And you see like her counterpoint in Joel is like, he just wants to get the story, right?
Yep.
He just wants to get the quote. Like, he's never thought a minute about like what he's doing and why.
Among best last movie lines in recent memory, by the way. Courtesy of him. Okay, that'll do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I was still too traumatized from the movie. Not that I want to throw that word around, but to laugh. But I thought that was really funny.
It was
really funny, and in a good way. The whole time I was sitting there watching this movie, I was like, "This is really great. I'm really into it. How are they going to end this thing?
Yeah.
What ending is going to be as satisfying as this journey I've just been on?" And they nailed it.
Yeah,
it was so perfect.
Honestly, to me, because the movie starts with the president, right, giving the speech about how he's going to win, and then, or practicing a speech.
I love that too. I mean, and hats off to Offerman for pulling that off, by the way. Just want to get his name in there.
Yeah, and then ends on his final words being, "Please don't kill me."
He's like, "Please don't let them kill me." So what do you think I'm going to do about this, man? Be like, "Okay, guys, don't do this."
Yeah.
All right.
But I honestly, when I kind of talking about it now, and I was I kind of went into this podcast thinking there's so much to talk about with this movie. It'll be interesting to see where I land on a social impact score after we've talked it all through. Because sometimes, my score will go up or down based on the discussion.
You think it's going to be one thing.
Yeah. But I did think, interestingly, that was kind of the most political moment of the movie. Yeah, the president's just another craven person who doesn't want to get killed and, doesn't want to face what, they were talking, and, there's so much subtle stuff in the movie, and I think that character, he's in those two parts, right? You hear his voice sometimes, but it's basically the beginning and the end. Right. Yet he kind of looms over the movie in a very interesting way. In the way you're trying, he has not talked to the press at all. He is apparently journalists are persona non grata at all in DC, in that they get killed. And you're like, okay, well, you think of these people as some big thing, and at the end of the day, it's just they are a human being. And that's so kind of pathetic. Right, Well, it's pathetic, and because it's he doesn't... I don't mean a human being, by the way, and we should have empathy for them. That's not what I mean at all. I just want to make sure that's clear. Yeah. No, I mean, you're thinking as you're watching it, you're the freaking president, get some final words together, right? That's it? That's what you got? Yeah, and it right? Yeah, and it is a pointed critique of where the office has landed these days. And again, not partisan political, but political nonetheless. Oh, yeah. Interesting fact is Alex Garland said he, so all, the stuff about the Civil War is written, and he just took it out of the movie. Makes the movie work a lot better, but it's, that foundation is, evident, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think it's I say about, seeing the alien Like, once you see it, it's not scary anymore, right? Or, like, explaining the magic.
Yeah.
Like, once you explain it,
Yeah.
it sounds stupid, and you're like,
I'm a dummy.
I can't have suspension of disbelief anymore. Like, there's just, like, such a better power leaving things out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, don't, just like, whatever, we all have magical powers, doesn't need to be explained.
Yeah. But also the fact that, you know, like, someone did that sort of, like, world building behind the scenes.
Yes.
Makes the movie work the way it does. Right?
Agreed. And to your point, I think, like, whether the actors did it in conjunction with him or whomever, the characterization building felt like it was done as well.
Yeah.
Because they, like, walked onto screen as fully realized people, and you just never needed to know their backstory.
No, yeah. Perfect, like, exposition-free movie.
There's so many times in this podcast where I'm like, oh God, why did I get forced to see that? And this is like, thank goodness.
It's like this is the 1 out of 10 where it's like, it makes all the the losers worth it.
Absolutely.
Happy to be wrong. I think it'll be like a new classic for sure.
Yeah, and just like that, I saw it in the theater.
Oh,
like
yeah.
thinking, so for that cinematography, like, what a disappointment if I had seen it for the first time on my TV. Right?
Yeah. And it'll be, like, awesome to rewatch on a TV, having had that experience.
Right,
you know,
but absolutely would have felt robbed of it. So, social impact score.
I feel comfortable handing out a 10 on this one.
Really?
I love the movie. And I think one thing I like...
I don't think you've ever handed out a 10 before.
I don't think so either. It might be a first 10. Mostly it's because the politics of the day were so not present in the movie. So, and you can edit this out, but like one of the things I was thinking about, like, why, obviously I'm not into politics. I think it's like kind of boring, but I was like, why don't I want this movie to have like today's in it? I'm like, for 2 reasons. One, the actors in the world now do not deserve to leave their mark on our art. They suck. 2, more importantly, nothing dates something worse than like the Donald Trump books that came out, like the Fire and Fury, all the Bob Woodward stuff, like those are already dated. Think about like how I had to explain who Howard Dean was to some of my 20-year-old colleagues. And
oh no.
This stuff is so lame. It's not fun, it's not entertaining, and it's just sad. So I was really pleased that was not present at all. Everything that was like even like the slightest bit political felt like this is just human nature.
So I would say, because I was thinking of this, almost my recommendation, very, very few movies have carried off political satire that works well on both sides.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say the only one like I can think of is Citizen Ruth, which absolutely skewers both sides of the abortion debate equally well. And you're like, it's your bias shows, like, it's really, really hard to make a movie where, like, you can skewer both sides so well. And so I'm like, just don't do it because it's going to be bad. Like, you're going to make a bad satire and it's going to be stupid and we're all going to hate it. So, like, I'm going to go with an 8 just because weird time to release will sadly be completely forgotten by Oscar season. Like,
oh yeah, well, you know, I think that the journey I've been on film wise is knowing that the Oscars are just not the end all be all of.
They're not, but like unfortunately for like the masses, like which sounded so snobby, and I'm fine with that. That's kind of like where
that's when they care about these movies.
Yeah,
so
that's when they think to watch something. Yeah. So I'm glad it did well box office wise. I didn't check. That's always the co-host job. I never looked.
25 mil opening weekend.
So, but just like, to me, like, finally, like, Men was such a bomb. Like, this just lived up to the promise of Ex Machina. Like, like, this is what I wanted you to do. Yeah,
or even just like
sophomore slump, we'll let it go.
Yeah. Well, he's 3 and done. He's not directing anymore.
Yeah, so I did truly love it, but I'm like, it's just such a weird time to sort of think about cultural impact right now. Yeah. So I'm not confident enough. Recommendations. Tell me what we should see, watch, do.
All right, I'm going to give you 2 TV shows and a book, along with this movie, which you should go see in theaters
definitely.
while you can. I'm about 140 pages away from finishing Middlemarch. It is unreal. It is... Anyone out there thinking it's stuffy and old,
You're a
look
hero.
in the mirror and disrespect yourself. It is so good and so entertaining. And then 2 shows. I've been big into HBO's Orphans lately, so I finished Carnival, and I'm on season 2 of Westworld. Also refuse to call it Max. That's a stupid name. I'm not what that network is called.
Fair enough. I am going on topic for this one. I actually did like a rewatch of this not so long ago. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Oh, the Tina Fey movie?
The Tina Fey movie. I mean, honestly, the Margot Robbie movie.
No.
Like,
is she in that?
Yeah, she's
did not know that.
So good in that. Like, it's a fun role for her. Especially like not being the lead. It lets her be a character actress a little bit more, which she definitely has a range to do. But like, totally a fun war correspondent. It's entertaining film. It's not great art like this, but it's an entertaining film. All right, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can tell us at moviesmatterpod@gmail.com. Check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. We're on some socials. Find us there if you have a comment. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.